How confident are you that 58 million is a good figure to work with, and what's the anticipated possible revenues since you've budgeted conservatively for this year?
I don't actually have the exact numbers. I ran over here actually because we're at the printer now and we had to do some proofing. So I would have to come back and explain that. But we're very comfortable with what we believe to be the deficit of 58 million. As I said, we've been very conservative in this approach. We've gone through every one of the cities over 100 funds to make sure that we didn't overlook anything. We reset some of the methodologies so that moving forward, we can feel pretty comfortable with being conservative. So we feel pretty good about where we are with the 58 million. What we don't feel good about is what it will take and the damage that it will cause to the delivery of services and addressing it.
Talk about the difficulty of managing the city budget, particularly given the unknowns in the state, in terms of the types, particularly in terms of the social services, health services that the city delivers?
You know, the biggest, for us, the biggest impact would be the redevelopment agency. It does not look like at this point that the governor has enough votes to totally eliminate it, but we are still negotiating on a way to get more pass-through monies to the schools. Now, I'm going to be very honest, so Lamont doesn't have to take heat for this. I was pretty disappointed when I saw that the prison guards union actually got an increase in their contract, and that this is a time when we are taking California schools to now maybe below Mississippi, so we're dead last in the nation, and that we haven't done oil extraction taxes, and we haven't even considered splitting the Prop 13 taxes so that corporations don't get to have the 1960 rate forever of taxation. Those kinds of things I think need to be done before seniors lose their services, and seniors and children take the biggest hit in the state budget. So how I think it affects us is that the people we're serving in our senior services, the young people in our community are going to get really hard hit because their schools are going to be the lowest funded in the country, and because we will see all of the wraparound services, healthcare, other kinds of services. And on top of that, the governor's talking about pushing more people out of the different institutions of the state, the prisons, CYA, et cetera, back to the community with no clear plan on local revenues. Now, I just came back from Michigan, where actually community agencies instead of prisons take care of young people, and their recidivism rate is only 18%. We send people to prison in this state, and the recidivism rate is about 90%. So I think it's a chance to redo the way we do things at all levels of government. So Mr. Euwell and I have been meeting with our partners. So for example, the Oakland Housing Authority in all three scenarios is taking over the physical sites in 2 of our current rec centers or teen centers. They have already started running the program at Campbell Village, where we have a little room, and they're making that into a teen center. We're also asking them to take Tassafaranga. I had the privilege of also appointing the Housing Authority board, and so we've been meeting together. I probably will also ask the Port of Oakland to take on some more security responsibilities. So we're going to work together as agencies, but one of the critical things that we're doing is that we're meeting together with the schools and we're meeting together with the counties. We had a beginning discussion of how, given that the seniors programs in the city have been stripped, when the schools took their cuts, they eliminated almost all the adult classes, which provided about 60% of all the programming for senior programs in the city. And so those went down. We tried to bring some of them on as employees of Park and Rec. I don't know if I can afford to do that. So we had meetings with Children's Hospital, with my husband's group, over 60s, and the county, to see if maybe we can consolidate our senior services to help us get through this tough time so that the people who receive the services are impacted less. I've been instructing my staff with Kids First and other programs to see if we can locate more of the after-school and violence programs on campuses to help support the schools more. So it's going to be a very tough time, but maybe some great new collaborations will come out of it, and we can at least try to maintain a baseline for people.
I'm not as concerned about saying how disappointed I am with regard to the recent contract with the guards, because I think that sets the wrong tone, especially when you're looking at local municipalities and asking them to take on more of the load and not willing to take on the challenge, in those areas that you have responsibility. I too don't believe that the RDA will go away, but they are talking now about modifications. And this is part of the problem, and forgive me because I'm just going to say this, but I'm semi-retired, so I can say this. Part of the problem, quite honestly, is that the reason that people don't have a lot of faith in the state today is because we go through all of these different propositions. You might remember Proposition 1A. That was where they agreed that from moving forward, if the cities would contribute a certain amount of money from the redevelopment agencies, that they couldn't do it again. You could do it 2 times in a 10-year period, and before you did it the second time, you had to pay the money back. And here we are today now talking about dissolving the one tool that most local governments have to keep the economy alive in recessions like this, or to address areas of blight. So I'm hoping that this is the change for not just municipal governments in the county, but the state especially, to chart out a course based on reality, take into consideration the priorities, take the politics out of this, and think about what's best for the state, what's best for this county, and what's best for local government.
Yeah, can you tell me the status of the parcel tax proposal, and also if you think you have enough votes in council to get it in front of voters?
I had 5 votes, and that's all you need. The reason I needed 6 earlier, because we wanted to make it, and once we realized that Jerry wasn't going to get his election, we wanted to make it an urgency so I could get the results before the fiscal year got too far ahead. Had I gotten the urgency vote, 3 weeks ago, we would have known on July 5th. That would only be 5 days into the fiscal year. Now we're not likely to know until August. So I believe we still had the 5 votes. So all it did was delay, because then they went straight into Easter break, and so we lost a month there, and we're trying to get it scheduled now. There's some question because of what happened to Mr. Russo. We're trying to figure out what they're going to do and whether or not we might also make this an election for city attorney. All of those things are being discussed right now, but as soon as we know, we will put it on the rules agenda.
You're speaking a little bit about recidivism and the prison and the incarceration rate of inmates in California. Based on that, and also based on the city attorney's recent announcement that he'll be leaving, do you expect Oakland to continue with the gang injunction strategy that he's pursuing?
I think the council has to look at it. They've spent $700,000 in legal expenses. I could fund 2 really good youth programs with that. I am recommending a series of reforms along the legal expenses that whenever, I think we've decided that whenever a case goes over $100,000 in legal costs, that a report has to at least go back to the city council, because I think everyone was surprised to see how much had been spent defending that when there had been no clear direction one way or other. So that's going to be a fiscal recommendation I'm going to make, not just because of that one, but there are several other cases. When I did the budget review and I was looking at how much had been spent, sometimes $250,000 up to $500,000 on legal cases that was not clear whether or not we wouldn't have settled, or what we need to weigh whether it was worth it to fight certain cases. And in other controversial cases, the city attorney has brought those to the council and made us actually agree to go ahead. But there are several cases that we found that had really ballooned that we didn't know about. So I'm going to recommend a procedure where on a monthly basis we get a list of all the cases that are over $100,000 in legal expenses, and so that the city council will know about that.
You talked about a sale, a one-time revenue. Chief, what is that? And
that's the Kaiser Center. That's the last piece really left.
And how many of these positions that you have listed here, the 368, the 145, the 80 under the 3 different scenarios, how many of those are vacant positions or frozen, or any of them frozen already?
We're trying to find out. We don't know. Let me just say on the 368, that assumes the sort of doomsday scenario that we get nothing from anyone and we can't make the minimum library. So that's a lot of librarians in there. So hopefully that won't happen. So I want to be very clear, hopefully that won't happen, because that's probably half librarians. The Public Works is a pretty big group. It's about 30 employees. That is, we have no general fund from Public Works that be in that. We think if we get down to 80, that a significant percentage of those will be vacant positions, because since I was elected, we'd asked to freeze positions because we knew this was going to be a really horrible budget.
How many officers do you expect to go through the academy?
It really depends on how we do it. I'm planning to do new partnerships with Merritt College to maybe do some of the academy as a part of a law and justice curriculum so that I can make the academy shorter, and also that we can recruit more local residents through that program. So we have gone anywhere from, over the last 5 years, from I think about 20 to 50 people in an academy. The question is not how many you get in, the question is how many you get out. Because in the early days, we were lucky to get 50% of the people to make it through the academy. So that's, again, why I want to do the academies a little differently, so that we get people into training and preparation, et cetera, so that we get a higher yield out of our academies. Because academies cost about $4 million. That's why it's worth it to me to bring back the people we've already trained who have been laid off now and push back then the cost of an academy. And one of the main differences between the three scenarios is if we have little money, we're only going to do one academy over 2 years. If we have more money, we'll do an academy each year in addition to bringing back our laid off officers, and it'll help us keep the numbers up.
This is the first academy since 2008?
I'm sorry?
This is the first academy since 2007, 2008?
Yeah, we had one from last year that was not totally completed. I still have 22 people who didn't quite complete their academy. And some of those people are still available to hire. We just have to finish their field training. So we have people in different levels, and we want to create a whole new a group of people that will start taking courses at Merritt College, et cetera, as part of growing our own officers. As you know, less than 15% of the Oakland police officers live in the city.
Are you going to be instructing city departments to start preparing for the worst case between now and June when you know about labor, and between now and August when you know about the mail-in ballot?
We already have, and in fact, they are working under the scenario of the worst-case scenario and planning for that. And but they're not waiting they're not waiting to see what happens, but they'll have plans for all three of those scenarios ready to roll out on July 1st.
Two things. First is, since the parcel tax is not on the May 3rd and it's not even scheduled for May 17th, that means it would probably roll over to the first meeting in June. And assuming they put it on the ballot, the election requires 90 days, et cetera, et cetera. You missed the county's deadline for putting something on for property tax. So would you hand bill? And the second is, are you now giving up Measure Q by virtue of worst case scenario if you cut librarians, there's already a baseline?
I'm not giving up because I'm fighting like hell to get the parcel tax on the ballot, personally, and you know.
And I can attest to that.
So I'm not giving that up. But you know, that is the reality. That's in the hands. That part is in the hands of the council. I assume that I still have the 5 votes from before. No one's told me that they've changed their mind. I think after people look at the scenario, I would hope I'd maybe get another vote. But who knows? We always assumed that we would do what we did with Measure BB. The fix on Measure Y is that we'd lend ourselves the money for the first year and then bill the following year. It's the cheapest way of doing it. We're not that broke. We have some reserves. In fact, we'll be getting back the money this year because of the money that we lent to BB. So that we should have enough. It's about the same amount of money. It would allow us to, it's the cheapest way because hand billing is really expensive. So we would just borrow the money for 1 year. Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I want to thank everybody for coming out on this very difficult day. I know it's a hard and dense subject. Whatever you can do to make it clear that the worst case scenario is something we had to put out, but we're hoping will not be enacted. And I thank you for even trying. It's really hard for me to explain this budget after years. And I know you have a tougher job. For some of you only get a few seconds to do it. Thank you.